I'm Stephanie Rozzo. Welcome to Nature Sketch Create's White-lined Sphinx Moth step-by-step painting instructions video. In this video, I'll be showing you how to paint the White-lined Sphinx Moth by using Nature Sketch Create's step-by-step painting instructions. First, collect all your materials and make sure they're ready to go. Remember, this is just a sketch. Take your time, relax, and don't worry too much if you think you may have made a mistake. Let's get started. Step 1, transfer the image to the watercolor paper. So you want to tape the transfer image to the back of the watercolor paper. Make sure you don't cover up any of the lines that you're going to be transferring or the hole punch lines if you plan on transferring those. Go ahead and place the graphite transfer paper dark side down, light side up. As you can see, I've used this several times, so you can use it over and over and over. Be sure to press that down flat, and then go ahead and start anywhere you like. I like to make a few marks just to make sure the transfer is actually happening. So make sure you're pressing hard enough so you can actually see the lines once you transfer them. Once you have those lines transferring and you checked that they have transferred and that they're dark enough for you to see after you put the watercolor on, you can go ahead and just start transferring by tracing right over all the lines. And if you don't get the lines exact, that's totally fine. This is just a sketch. Just want to relax and enjoy yourself. And maybe put on some music or a podcast or an audiobook and just take your time just drawing over all those lines to transfer them. When you think you have all the lines transferred, go ahead and flip the image up and down so you can find the lines that you missed, if you missed any. I always end up missing something. And you flip it up and down like a sketchbook and you can see. Always hold one part down gently with my hand while I flip it up and down just to make sure it doesn't go anywhere, even with the tape. Even after that, if you still end up missing something, you can always add it in later. It's just easier to have it now. And if you want, go ahead and transfer the common name and scientific name. When transferring the common name, just try to outline it on the inside part of the black. And that will give you something that looks similar and in similar size to the actual type. And then when you transfer the scientific name, just trace right over it. When you have all the lines transferred, go ahead and remove the graphite transfer paper. Like I said before, you can use that over and over, so we're not throwing it away. And then gently remove the tape from the watercolor paper. And if the tape comes off clean, I like to save it and use it later. If it doesn't, then you can throw it away. Sometimes it picks up some of the paper. And remove any smudges with your kneaded eraser. And I recommend making sure you have a clear, lighter gray spot to use so you don't transfer any pencil or lead that you had already on that kneaded eraser to your image. And you can just gently rub it to get those smudges, kind of dabbing it. Removes those smudges. And you can also lighten any lines if you want. It's helpful to have it on the darker side, but you can lighten them by just kind of dabbing it over the lines. And it'll pick up some of that graphite that was transferred. Now I'm ready to move on to step 2. Step 2, paint in the White-lined Sphinx Moth tan. So you'll need 6 drops of 26H chrome yellow. Make sure to shake up the paint before you add it to your palette to make sure that any paint pigment that may have settled on the bottom or the sides gets mixed in. And take 6 drops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And 1 drop of the 19H burnt sienna. Let's shake that up. And mix it up with a little bit of water. So I'm putting a little pressure on my barrel of this water brush, or the handle, whatever you want to call it. And you can also, if you're using a regular brush, just use a little bit of water from your cup or whatever you're holding water in to use. And dab it off on your towel. And then you can test it on your paper, a little test strip. Looks like the really dark color. I'm going to use the wettest, lightest, so I'll take a little bit of that and put it to the side and add a bunch of water to it. So just pressing on my water brush handle or barrel, dabbing off on my towel and then testing it out. It looks like the wettest, lightest color. So least concentrated color, so it has more water added to it in your palette. Dabbing it off after picking some more up. And then I'm just going to add it like you see in step 2's image to all of those spaces. And if you need your brush to be a little bit more of a fine tip, just kind of roll it gently. You should have plenty of paint. Feel free to pick up more paint if it runs out or you need more. Just going to add it to all these places. Just like you see in step 2's image. And don't worry too much if you make any mistakes. Every time I paint, my image ends up being just a little bit different. The color a little bit darker or a little bit lighter, or I paint a space that I didn't paint before. The watercolor ends up going somewhere different. This looks a little darker, but it'll be perfectly imperfect. Once you've added all the Sphinx Moth tan, go ahead and clean off your brush and let it dry and move on to step 3. Step 3, paint in the dry dark Sphinx Moth pink. First mix the Sphinx Moth pink. You'll need 1 drop of the chrome yellow, and 2 drops of the Crimson Lake. Mix that up with your clean brush, adding a little bit of water while you're doing that. Dab it off on your towel, test it out, looks good. Now I'm going to get that little bit more of that color on my brush, dab it off on my towel, and then add it to the area closest to the abdomen here on the hind wing. So it's a little bit too dark. Dabbing it off. It's a little dark. That's okay. So I started and I found I'm using color that's a little too dark, so I'm adding a little bit more water on my palette, dabbing it off on my towel and testing it out again. Maybe a little lighter. Looks better though. Now it's a little light. Sometimes a little trial and error. It looks good. Again, picking it up, dabbing it off on my towel, and reapplying it to the rest of this area. And I don't want too much. Just go ahead and apply it to about halfway. Clean my brush off. And then just apply that damp brush, and it'll pull that pink color to the edge, creating a little gradient there. So even if you have to stop and redo it, it's still gonna look great. Pick up some more paint and do the same thing on the other hind wing here, starting close to the abdomen or the body. Moving about halfway, doesn't need to be exact. Cleaning my brush off to get the paint out, taking that clean damp brush and just moving it over that paint and bringing it to the other edge. I'm gonna take a little bit of that color too. Let me test it on my paper again, it looks good. Dab it off on my towel after picking some up and adding it to the proboscis. Picking up some more, dabbing on my towel and adding it to the lower parts here of the abdomen. And if it's a little dark or a little light, don't worry, each of these mouths are a little bit more individual in the amount of pink that's on their abdominal area. Some seem to have more, some seem to have less based on all the many images I looked at when creating this. And clean off your brush, let this dry, and move on to step 4. Step 4, paint in the driest, darkest Sphinx Moth black. So you want to mix the Sphinx Moth black, shaking it up first and adding it to your palette. Maybe a drop, maybe 2 drops. It doesn't really matter because you're not mixing it with any other colors. Add a little bit of water to it just to make sure it moves smoothly on your paper. Dab it off on your towel and test it on your paper. It looks good. And then you're going to add that to the wings, the eye, this little area above the eye, and there's just a little line right here, and the abdomen as you see in step 4's image. And if any of these spaces are too small, it's nice to have this kind of watercolor underneath. It's not as dark, it's a little more transparent than ink, but it'll look great if you use the ink instead too, if you are not feeling comfortable about getting these small areas. You can see some of it is going to come out a little more transparent, and that'll give a nice look to the painting if you are able to get those small spots here. But if you feel more comfortable waiting to use the ink at the end, that's fine too. Once you have all of the black added, go ahead and clean up your brush and move on to step 5. Step 5, paint in the Sphinx Moth Sienna. Just want 2 drops of the 19H burnt sienna. Just like the previous step, we're just going to add a little bit of water to it. You could add just 1 drop too, but 2 drops will give you a little more to work with. And just add a little bit of water. And test it out on my test paper here. Looks good. I'm going to add that driest, darkest color to the forewings, antenna, lower abdomen, thorax, head, and eye, as you can see in step 5's image. So you can just, again, if you need a tip, just roll it on your towel to create a tip to get in those small spaces like the antenna. And go ahead and go through and add that Sphinx Moth Sienna. Clean up my brush a little bit and pick up a little more paint again and add a good amount of water to it on another part of my palette with a clean spot there. Dab it on my towel and test it out. And use this wettest, lightest Sphinx Moth Sienna. Picking up some more, dabbing on my towel. I'm going to add it to this upper part of the abdomen, just like you see in the image. I think this goes down here a little bit more too. It doesn't have to. Feel free to go back and add more paint once the area is dry if you missed anything in a previous step. Or leave it as it is. I'm going to clean off my brush and move on to step 6. Step 6. Paint in driest, darkest Sphinx Moth deep brown, driest, darkest pink, and wettest, lightest black. So I'm going to turn my palette around, making sure not to mix my colors together. And I'm going to mix the Sphinx Moth deep brown. I want 6 drops of the burnt sienna. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And 1 drop of the carbon black. Go ahead and mix that up, putting a little water in it while you mix. and test it out on my paper. Looks good. I'm going to dab it off on my towel after picking some more up and start applying it. And I'm going to add that to the forewings, the antenna, the thorax, and the head, just like you see in step 6 image. Again, there's nothing exact about this, just get the paint in there. And if you add some other paint, like I just added this to the antenna, you don't have to do that. That's different from step 6. The placement, the exact placement of the dark color is not going to be the same. It's going to be your unique painting. And you'll probably find that it'll be unique every time you paint. Once you have all of the Driest Darkest Sphinx Moth Deep Brown added, clean off your brush and move on to adding the Dry Dark Sphinx Moth Pink. So I'm using the Dry Dark Sphinx Moth Pink again, just to deepen that color a little bit, dabbing it off on my towel and testing it on my paper. Looks good. I'm just going to add it again to the hind wings and the abdomen. I'll use the same technique I used before, kind of bring it up to half, dabbing it off on my towel, having to clean my brush and bringing it to the edges. Again, adding it in about halfway up, dabbing my towel and bringing it up to the edges. Then to pick up a little bit more, just kind of add it to the abdominal area too, just to brighten it up, because that color is real fun. I'm going to clean off my brush. Then I'm going to add some water to my black. I'm going to pick that a little bit of it up and move it to a clean spot on my palette. You don't need a lot of space, you can use this tiny space. Dab it off onto my towel, test it on my paper. It's a good gray color. And just going to be adding that to the back tip here of the abdomen. There's a little spot here. And to the wings as well, like you see in step 6 image. If it's too dark, just dab it off onto your towel to lighten it up. When you're done with that, go ahead and clean your brush off. Like I said, you can always go back and add more paint. I did miss a little bit here. That deep brown color. And add that in there. You can always add more paint. And now I'm going to let this dry and move on to step 7. Step 7, add ink lines. I'm going to start with the black 005 micron, and I'm going to again use my transfer image to protect my painting, and I'm going to refer to my final reference image and my transfer image if I want to see where those lines are if I can't see them. You can redefine the lines as well, so if the paint ended up in a different spot than the way the transfer lines were, which happens and happened to me several times, just a few places, you can redefine those lines and redraw it. And in addition to drawing in those lines, make sure to add those fine hairlines and outline these little white areas a little bit with this tiny tipped marker pen. And also outline, if you transferred, the common name and write in the scientific name as well. Using this fine tipped pen helps as a first step, so that if you aren't quite sure where those lines are supposed to be and you make some sort of mistake that you don't like, you can go back and kind of correct it with those thicker lines. So just go ahead and go throughout and draw in all those lines. Next, you want to use the black 01 micron to outline the bottom of the antenna. Go ahead and add some darker line to the proboscis. And also this left side of the leg. And make sure to write in the scientific name as well. And then we'll move on to the 08 black micron. And this can't smudge, so just be careful when you're using it. I'm going to use it to fill in the common name, thicken some of the lines in areas such as the wings, the lower line of the abdomen, the right side of the antenna, and the area by the leg seen in the final image. So just refer to your final image mostly and just add it where you see it, kind of a thicker. And anywhere that you think you need to add a little bit as well. So anything that you think needs to be a little darker, go ahead and add it in. And I like the way this looks, so I'm going to stop there. But if you'd like to add some more paint or some more ink, you can go ahead and do that. Just make sure you don't work too long on it. It is just a sketch. Make sure to let it dry in between adding the different ink or paint layers so that it doesn't smudge or blend together. So we're done. Great job. You have created a painting that only you could do. Thank you for joining me. I hope you had fun and had a chance to relax a little. Next, you have some options of what to do with this. You can punch holes in it and add it to your sketchbook. You can frame it, gift it, also share it on our Facebook fan page. If you enjoy this video, please click the like button and subscribe to this channel. Make sure to check out naturesketchcrate.com to purchase future lesson crates and to sign up for regular updates through our newsletter.